Squid Game Season 3: The Experiment of Controlling Instinct. Have you ever wondered what's scarier than death in Squid Game? It's not being shot down in red light, green light, or falling through the glass bridge. It's when you, in a moment of near death, realize you've been transformed into the very thing you despise most, a pure instinct. Devoid of ethics, devoid of humanity, a being capable only of hunting or hiding, forgetting everything that constitutes human value and dignity. Welcome back to Sleepless Mind, where we stay awake together to dissect the big questions, the mysteries that keep your mind tirelessly pondering. We've explored fallen civilizations and fascinating parallel universes, but tonight, we will dive deep into a realm even darker and more terrifying: the human psyche when pushed to its absolute limit. Squid Game isn't just a global hit entertainment series, a pop culture phenomenon with thrilling plot twists or sensational gore. It's a terrifying mirror, reflecting the darkest hidden corners of society and human nature. It's an allegory for the games we are trapped in within modern life. We've seen the collapse of reason, the erosion of morality, and the rise of primal survival instincts in previous seasons. But in this Season 3, Squid Game has elevated everything to a new level. It doesn't just control will. It doesn't just manipulate emotions. It delves deep into the most primal survival instincts of human beings, manipulating fear and desire in the most brutal and sophisticated ways. It forces players to confront a naked truth: are we truly rational, compassionate beings, or nearly programmed animals when faced with the razor's edge of life and death? Tonight, Sleepless Mind will not analyze plot twists or film endings. We will dissect each new game of Season 3, every detail of its design, every seemingly simple rule that is, in fact, filled with insidious malice, to discover whether they were created based on the most terrifying psychological experiments in history. Experiments into how far human beings can be controlled. The main question we will contemplate together is, can humans truly be free when placed in extreme situations? When the line between life and death blurs, or is our will, our morality, our compassion merely a fragile veneer, easily torn away when confronted with the most primal fear, the fear of death? Take a deep breath, because this journey will take us to places you might not want to see. Places hidden deep within yourself. Are you ready to confront your own most primal instincts? If so, hit the like button on this video and comment ready so we can begin this chilling journey together. Awakening the primal instincts of hunt and fear. Opening Season 3, Squid Game no longer retains the deceptive innocence of simple childhood games like Red Light, Green Light, or Dalgona from previous seasons. Instead, it thrusts players directly into a game whose name alone speaks of its brutality: hide and seek. Or as they called it, keys and knives. Imagine you, along with dozens, perhaps hundreds of players who survived the brutal previous rounds, or led into a vast arena. Unlike previous games, where you simply had to follow rules or make an individual choice, this time, the first thing you face is a shroud of information. You and the others are kept in the dark, unaware of the next rules, or what you will face. Then, suddenly, a machine appears, and the overseers, with their expressionless masks, instruct you to step forward one by one to draw a ball from the machine. No explanation, just the intense suspense as you reach in, feeling the coldness of the fateful ball. And then, you receive a ball, blue or red. Immediately, you and the others are split into two groups. The blue team is given keys of various shapes and instructed to either find an exit and escape within 30 minutes, or stay hidden to avoid being caught by members of the red team before the game ends. Importantly, Once a door has been opened with a key, it cannot be locked again. A path is opened, but it is also a path that cannot be closed, with no retreat. Conversely, the red team is given knives. Their mission: find and kill at least one member of the blue team within 30 minutes. If they fail to kill anyone, they themselves will be eliminated. The only consolation is that red team members are not allowed to attack each other. This isn't out of humanity, but to keep the game flowing smoothly and focused on its target. From the moment those instructions echo, the playground is no longer just a playground. It becomes a primal survival arena. Players are no longer mere players. They are hunters or prey. Instantly, their roles are completely transformed, from the ambiguity of completing a task to the horror of hunting or being hunted. But what makes this round even more insidious is the opportunity to switch sides. Before the game officially begins, an offer is made. If any of you are not satisfied with your currently assigned role, you may instead choose to switch sides with someone from the opposing team before the game begins. As long as both parties agree, you may trade your vest and items with another player. A vest, a knife exchanged for a key and a chance to escape. It sounds like a wonderful freedom of choice, doesn't it? A moment of empathy, of understanding for another's fear. But this is a psychological manipulation so sophisticated it's chilling. It's not freedom, it's a trap. It immediately sows seeds of suspicion, calculation, and self-interest above any fragile social bonds that might remain. Think about it. If you're on the red team, holding a knife, would you readily hand it over to a trembling blue team member in exchange for a key and become prey yourself? Would you trust them not to stab you immediately after exchanging vests? And if you're on the blue team, terrified, would you readily take the knife, become a hunter, and face the prospect of having to kill someone to survive? This exchange isn't just about roles. It's an exchange about human nature. It forces you to confront the question, do you choose to be the lamb or the wolf? And what is the price of that choice? It exacerbates suspicion among players, even before the starting whistle blows. The hide-and-seek game is not a random idea or merely for entertainment. It is a miniature psychological laboratory, brutally designed to test one of the most frightening theories in social psychology, social role theory in its culmination, the Lucifer effect by psychologist Philip Zimbardo. Let's revisit one of the most controversial and haunting experiments in the history of psychology, the Stanford Prison Experiment. In 1971, Zimbardo selected healthy, psychologically stable college students and randomly assigned them to two groups, guards and prisoners. He created a simulated prison environment in the basement of Stanford University. Initially, all were normal, well-meaning young men, but within days, even hours, something terrifying unfolded. The ordinary guards began to become brutal, authoritarian, abusing their power uncontrollably. They devised terrifying punishments, systematically bullying and humiliating the prisoners. Meanwhile, the ordinary prisoners became passive, desperate, obedient, and even showed signs of severe psychological breakdown. The experiment had to be stopped after only 6 days, instead of the planned 2 weeks, due to the extreme level of dehumanization and suffering. Zimbardo and his team demonstrated how environment and assigned roles can profoundly influence human behavior, sometimes transforming good people into brutal perpetrators, or strong individuals into resigned victims. The hide-and-seek game in Squid Game is a brutal, large-scale recreation of the SPE. Red Team. They are immediately given the role of a guard with absolute power, the power over life and death. The red vest and the knife are not just attire or weapons, they are symbols of authority. A license for brutality. Red Team players, who were ordinary people just moments before, are now permitted to become hunters. The pressure to kill at least one person to survive transforms them into reluctant executioners. Or even those who revel in power, you can see the rapid change in their eyes, from confusion to determination, even a cold ruthlessness. They are not just playing, they are carrying out a mission for survival. And in the process, moral boundaries blur. A red vest, a knife, and a kill or be killed rule. Can you be sure you wouldn't become the wolf? Blue team, conversely, these players are stripped of all power, forced into the role of prisoners of prey, the constant feeling of being hunted, not knowing where death will come from which hidden enemy, creates extreme panic, paranoia, and despair. They are not just running, they are grappling with humanity's most primal fear, the fear of being hunted, the fear of uncontrollable death. They become passive, hide, and their eyes fill with helplessness. The terrifying aspect of the Lucifer effect is that it shows that people don't necessarily have to be inherently evil to do evil things. All it takes is a sufficiently corrupt system, a sufficiently powerful assigned role, and a sufficiently high-pressure environment for anyone to become corrupted. Squid Game doesn't seek out evil people. It creates evil people by placing them in a system where violent behavior is the only path to survival, where morality becomes a luxurious burden. Have you ever seen this unfold in daily life? Perhaps not to the brutal life or death extent of Squid Game. But think about the pressure in a toxic work environment, where colleagues are willing to step over each other to achieve goals. Or on social media, where a keyboard and a screen can transform ordinary people into anonymous guards, ready to insult and verbally abuse others without direct confrontation. When you're given a little bit of power, or anonymity, do you ever feel yourself pushing moral boundaries further than usual? Beyond social roles, the hide-and-seek game also delves into the most primal instincts of human beings. Legacies from millions of years of human evolution on the savannah, it simultaneously activates two of the most basic survival responses: the instinct to hunt and the primal fear of being hunted. For the red team, this is a brutal test of the hunting instinct. Being armed with knives, given the command to kill at least one to survive, transforms them into hunters. Adrenaline surges through their veins, awakening the primal urge to control, to take down prey. The stealthy footsteps, the scanning eyes, the tension of detecting the target, all are elements of a hunt. What's terrifying is that, once this instinct is awakened, some may feel a strange euphoria, a morbid satisfaction in holding the power of life and death. Or for others, it's a terrible internal struggle between the dictates of instinct and what remains of their conscience. But either way, the objective of kill at least one is a clear mission, an undeniable pressure, forcing them to act. Conversely, for the blue team, it is the extreme horror of being hunted, the feeling of death lurking around every corner, the echoing footsteps in the maze, the terror of being discovered, all activate the fight or flight response in its most potent form. Hearts pound, pupils dilate, muscles tense. In this situation, reason is often overridden by instinct. Players may make impulsive decisions, run into dead ends, or even attack recklessly when cornered. The sole objective is survival. At any cost, any thoughts of cooperation, of morality, become luxuries. The detail about the three types of keys that the blue team receives is an insidious manipulation of information and trust. To escape, all three types of keys are needed. This creates a forced interdependence among those being hunted, but at the same time, it sows the seeds of suspicion and individual calculation. Imagine you're on the blue team, you have the circle key, you find another person who has the triangle key. Would you trust them to share it with you when both of you are running from the hunters? Or would the insane thought cross your mind that if you could take their key, you'd have a higher chance of survival? This game turns cooperation into a double-edged sword. Even among the victims, there is a hidden hunt, a hunt for the pieces of survival. This forced interdependence, coupled with extreme suspicion, pushes blue team players into an incredibly stressful psychological state. They not only had to fear the external enemy but also had to be suspicious of each other. This is a subtle form of dehumanization. It forces you to view your fellow humans not just as teammates, but as potential treasure to exploit, or a latent threat. This experiment shows that if your boss suddenly hands you a bright red vest and a sharp utility knife one day, don't immediately think it's April Fool's Day or a new team-building exercise. Run, or, at the very least, ask if the bonus for eliminating the competition is enough to compensate for the psychological trauma. Hide and seek as a child was about finding each other, giggling when discovered behind the wardrobe, and then sharing candy. Hide and seek in Squid Game, however, is about avoiding being found and being cold-bloodedly killed. This is the hardcore level of a children's game, where the ending is not a hug but a bullet, and you think your deadline is terrifying. Try playing hide and seek with a knife lurking behind you, with the goal of being permanently eliminated from life itself. You'd certainly find your deadline suddenly much more manageable, or perhaps you'd start looking at your boss with the eyes of an overseer. Controlling your own corporate survival game. The hide and seek, keys and knives game has exposed our primal hunting instincts and deepest fears. It shows how a malevolently designed environment can transform ordinary people into brutal hunters or desperate prey. But are we willingly playing hide and seek in our lives? Or are we being hunted by invisible pressures, by unspoken rules of society? Are we being pushed into roles we don't want, simply to survive? What do you think is the most terrifying aspect of the hide and seek round? The direct threat of death, or the way it exposes the fragility of human will when pushed into the role of hunter or hunted? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your deep reflections. Don't forget to subscribe to the Sleepless Mind channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part, where even the body's movements are manipulated, and the line between control and freedom blurs even further. Manipulating movement and invisible pressure. After the horror of the hide and seek round, where primal hunting instincts and fear were brutally awakened, Squid Game Season 3 continues to push players into a new, more sophisticated level of psychological manipulation. This time, it targets simple, repetitive bodily actions, transforming a familiar childhood game into a nightmare of compliance and invisible pressure. The jump rope round. Imagine the scene. You and the surviving players, minds still haunted by the chases and hiding, are brought to a new space. It's not a vast arena like before, but a solitary bridge stretching over a bottomless chasm. And then, you see them. Young Hee and Chol Soo, two giant robot dolls. Seemingly inanimate but symbols of death and horror from previous seasons, now swinging a colossal jump rope together. The rules are cruelly simple. Each player must make their way across the bridge while jumping over the rope as it swings. To pass, you must reach the other side within 20 minutes. The order in which you cross the bridge within the time limit is entirely up to you. The appearance of Young Hee and Chol Soo is not just a visually shocking detail. It's a key element in manipulating the player's psychology. These two dolls have been conditioned to represent death, instant punishment. Now, they don't just watch you, they force you to move, to jump in your own dance of life and death. But the peak of brutality, a detail that sends shivers down one's spine, is the element of player 222's baby being forced to adopt her number. The clear implication: if a player fails, Not only do they die, but the consequences extend to innocent souls, their loved ones. This is no longer just personal pressure. This is the burden of an entire generation. A chilling warning about the consequences of weakness, of failure. This transforms the game from a fight for oneself into a fight for the survival of one's family, one's lineage, making players willing to do anything to get through. The jump rope round is a perfect illustration of Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning, one of the most classic psychological experiments of the 20th century. Pavlov demonstrated that a neutral stimulus could be linked to a natural response for repetition. Eventually, just the sound of the bell would automatically make the dog salivate. In Squid Game, the design of the jump rope round is similar. The act of jump roping itself is a harmless, joyful childhood activity, but through previous rounds, the gunshots, Seong Gi-hun's beeps, and the presence of the overseers have been conditioned to be signals of death and extreme fear. Now, the act of jumping over the rope, under the gaze of Seong Gi and Chol-soo, with the sound of the swinging rope in the countdown, is not just a physical action. It becomes a ritual of life and death, a programmed reflex of fear. Have you ever heard a certain song, a familiar melody, and suddenly felt anxious, an unsettling feeling rising for no clear reason? Perhaps that song coincidentally played during a moment of great stress, an important interview, or bad news, and so, your brain unconsciously created a link, a conditioning. Now, just hearing that melody, your body will automatically react with anxiety, even if the song itself has no direct connection to your fear. The jump rope round in Squid Game cruelly utilizes this mechanism to turn players into obedient puppets, dancing to the rhythm of fear. Time pressure is another crucial factor. 20 minutes to cross the bridge. The clock counts down relentlessly, gnawing away at every moment of hope, creating immense psychological pressure. This pressure overshadows reason, forcing players to make hasty decisions, regardless of the risks. Panic escalates, strategic thinking diminishes, and the likelihood of making mistakes skyrockets. They must decide the order of crossing the bridge, a seemingly free choice that, in reality, contains the trap of calculation and fear. Who will go first? Who will be the one to test that rope? This is precisely the single path effect. There is only one path, one single action to survive. This limits creativity and strategy, increasing reliance on strict compliance and leaving no room for error. You cannot find another way. You cannot negotiate the rules. You can only jump, and the element of player 222's child being assigned her number is the peak of emotional manipulation. A direct blow to the instinct to protect the next generation. The child being assigned a number forces players to confront the consequences of failure not only for themselves but also for innocent souls, their loved ones. This is no longer just personal pressure. This is the burden of an entire generation, a chilling warning about the consequences of weakness, of failure. This transforms the game from a fight for oneself into a fight for the survival of one's family, of one's lineage. Are you willing to do anything, even things you despise, for the future and survival of your child? This question isn't just for players in Squid Game, but it echoes in the lives of millions of parents worldwide. Who would have thought that a school PE class, the very jump rope game we used to be lazy about as kids, could become such a haunting life or death test? If I had known back then, I would have skipped jump rope class very diligently, or perhaps practiced to become a professional jump roper to avoid elimination. It turns out, jump roping not only helps with weight loss but also drastically reduces the number of players, a shockingly effective way to solve overpopulation that few would have anticipated. And do you see any connections to modern life? Every Monday morning, do you ever feel like you're being controlled by an invisible rope? forced to jump over obstacles, over deadlines, without truly understanding the ultimate purpose. Every time your alarm clock rings, could it be a form of conditioning that makes you automatically spring out of bed? Burdened by the fear of being late or losing pay, the jump rope game in Squid Game is a gruesome magnification of the invisible pressures we face every day. Pressures that force us to comply, to constantly move to the rhythm of a larger system. The jump rope round transformed basic movements into a burden of life and death, where compliance is conditioned by extreme fear, but are we being controlled by an invisible rope in our daily lives, forcing us to jump over hurdles without truly understanding its purpose or consequences? Are we unconsciously following a script written by society? Share your thoughts in the comments. In your opinion, what is the invisible rope that controls our lives the most? And don't forget to subscribe to the Sleepless Mind channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part, where we will explore a game that pushes human morality even further into the abyss, where you are forced to push down your fellow human beings to survive. Pushing down your fellow man and stripping away the right to live. After the high-pressure and psychologically conditioned jump rope round, Squid Game Season 3 once again pushes players to a new pinnacle of brutality, where the rules force them to personally shed their last layers of morality. This time, it's not about hiding, nor blind compliance. This time, it's about pushing down your fellow man in the game called Squid Game. Imagine standing on a colossal, square stone pillar, suspended in midair. Around you are other players, their eyes filled with tension and suspicion. Below is a dizzying abyss. You know that death lurks, but the way it comes is utterly horrifying. The rules are announced coldly. There will be 3 rounds. You will start on the square pillar, move on to the triangle pillar, and finally end on the circle pillar. On each shape, you will play a pushing game. Starting on the square pillar you are all currently standing on, if you as a group manage to push 1 or more players off while they are still alive, the round will end and all remaining players will move on to the triangle pillar. Likewise, if you are able to eliminate 1 or more players on the triangle pillar in the second round, then you will move on to the circle pillar. Finally, if you eliminate 1 or more players on the circle pillar in the third round, then the remaining players on that pillar will be the game's final winners. And here's the brutal twist. If you fail to eliminate at least 1 player within a round's given time limit, then all players on the pillar will be eliminated. Each round would last 15 minutes, but would not start until they officially clicked the button on each platform. If a person died before the button was pushed, their death would not count toward the rules and they would need to kill another in order to fulfill the requirements. This is not an individual game, this is a collective game in its most brutal form, forcing the entire group to collectively agree to kill 1 person to survive. From seemingly innocent childhood games, Squid Game has evolved into a social experiment where your survival is determined by collective cruelty. The Squid Game round doesn't just test physical strength or dexterity. It's a psychological machine designed to trigger the dehumanization effect to its maximum extent. When the rules force players to view their fellow humans as obstacles, as objects to be eliminated for their own and the group's survival, the line between human and object is completely erased. You no longer see the person standing next to you as an individual with their own fears, hopes, and story. You see them as a number that needs to be reduced, an impediment that needs to be pushed away for the scales of survival to tip in your favor. Connect this to the famous Milgram experiment. This experiment demonstrated that ordinary people could perform cruel acts if ordered to do so by an authority figure. In Squid Game, the rules set by the front man or that authority. It doesn't directly command kill people, but it presents a condition, kill to survive, or all will die. This pressure, stemming from the rules of the game and from the group's fear of elimination, pushes players into a situation where complying with the kill order becomes the only logical choice. Alongside Milgram, we clearly see the bystander effect in this game. When responsibility is diffused among an entire group, individuals feel less personal guilt. Who will be the first to act? Who will bear the primary responsibility for that death? If I don't push, someone else will. If I don't do it, we all die. This very diffusion of responsibility makes brutal actions more easily accepted within the collective psyche. Do you dare to be the one to push another, or will you wait for someone else to do it for you? Telling yourself that you were merely part of a collective decision? This game also creates a terrifying conformity pressure. When the survival of the entire group depends on eliminating one member, dissent will be suppressed by the group members themselves. You're not pushing, so you want all of us to die? This question will echo in each person's mind, turning silence into consent, turning fear into action. This is an extreme form of social control, where the group self-purges under external pressure. Squid Game not only compels brutal actions but also forces players into the most agonizing moral dilemmas. This game doesn't allow for individual skill. It doesn't care how smart or agile you are. It only tests your trust in those who came before you and your ruthlessness when you are forced to push another. The confined space of the pillars increases the pressure and the close proximity to the victim. You cannot hide. You cannot keep your distance. You stand face to face with the person you might have to push. Seeing the fear in their eyes, this makes the act of dehumanization emotionally harder, yet compels it by the pressure of survival. The moral choices in Squid Game have no absolute right or wrong. Kill to live, or all die. These are what philosophy calls moral dilemmas, where every choice is painful, and no path is entirely good. The game forces players to confront the true nature of selfishness and sacrifice. Relate this to real life. Have you ever faced this or them decisions in a fiercely competitive environment? In a project where you have to discard a colleague's idea for yours to be chosen? Or during an economic crisis, where you have to lay someone off to save the company? Although not a matter of life and death, systemic pressure can force us to make similar choices, where ethics are weighed against survival. Who would have thought that pushing someone to the edge isn't just a workplace metaphor? It turns out, teamwork isn't always harmonious. Sometimes, teamwork in a cutthroat competitive environment means collectively pushing someone out of the game in the kindest way possible, or at least ensuring you're not solely responsible. If someone invites you to play Squid Game at the next team building event, be sure to check if they're holding a knife or trying to push you off your financial pillar. You certainly wouldn't want to decide who gets eliminated in the year-end sales race. Or you might wonder, does there exist a button in your company that, when pressed, removes someone from the promotion race? And does that button have a 15-minute countdown? The Squid Game round pushed human will to its limits, forcing us to confront primal survival instincts and terrifying moral choices. It shows how far humans can go to survive, and how fragile morality becomes when power and the fear of death reign supreme. But are we unconsciously pushing each other in daily life, driven by the invisible pressures of society, of endless competition? Are we unknowingly participating in games where the orchestrators want us to forget our compassion? Share your thoughts. What is the most terrifying thing about choosing between your own survival and your morality? Don't miss the next part, where Sleepless Mind will unveil the puppet masters behind the curtain, the morbid VIPs, Chol Sus Roll, and their chilling secrets. Manipulators and the secret experimental stage. After witnessing the brutality of primal instincts in the hide-and-seek round, the unconscious conditioning in the jump rope round, and the erosion of morality in Squid Game, you've probably started to wonder, who is behind all of this? Who designed such horrifying games, not just for entertainment but to push humanity to the very limits of its nature? Tonight, Sleepless Mind will pull back the curtain, diving deep into the minds of the manipulators, the VIPs and the orchestrators, to uncover their true purpose and the large-scale social experiments they're conducting. Season 3 of Squid Game has revealed more about the figures behind the curtain, and one of the most notable revelations is the final role of Chol-soo, the name previously mentioned with mysterious intrigue, regardless of his exact role, perhaps the chief architect of the new games. A high-ranking VIP with the most morbid desires, or even an anonymous member of the game's governing council, Chol-soo's appearance always signals a new game, a more cruel level of psychological and physical torment. This isn't just about money, this is about absolute power, about witnessing the collapse of a species. The manipulators in Squid Game, from the cold, enigmatic frontman to the VIPs with their gruesome animal masks, are not ordinary murderers. They're controllers. They transform the playing field into a stage, each player into a puppet, and death into a morbid art performance. The most terrifying aspect is that they aren't just seeking money from the players. They seek something even more precious, the perverse satisfaction of observing the true, primal nature of humanity when pushed to its ultimate limits. Squid Game, in all its brutality, can be seen as a large-scale social control experiment disguised as entertainment. It's like a giant laboratory where morbid scientists observe human behavior under extreme pressure. Each game round is a meticulously designed test to strip away layers of reason, morality, and humanity until only raw survival instinct remains. Connect this to some of the darkest chapters in the history of psychology and government, such as the CIA's Project MK Ultra. Although MKUltra's goal was mind control, brainwashing, and behavioral manipulation using harsh methods, the mechanism of manipulating human psychology under extreme conditions shares many similarities. Both aim to discover, to what extent can human will be controlled? Is it possible to break down individual perception and force a person to do what they wouldn't normally, by altering the environment and applying psychological pressure? In Squid Game, the VIPs and the frontman don't use drugs, but they use the fear of death and the hope of a changed life as a brainwashing tool more effective than any chemical. The VIP's true purpose isn't merely to profit from the bets. Money is just a small part of the bigger picture. Their primary goal is the intense satisfaction derived from witnessing the true nature of humanity. They believe that life outside the game is a farce, where everyone pretends to be good, pretends to be moral. They want to prove that, when pushed into a life or death situation, all social veneers will be stripped away, and humans will revert to their primal essence, selfish, brutal, willing to do anything to survive. Are they seeking a truth about humanity, a naked truth about depravity, or simply the morbid entertainment of those who have everything and nothing left to excite them? This question haunts us because it exposes an incredibly pessimistic view of human nature. Let's delve deeper into Philip Zimbardo's Lucifer effect. This effect doesn't just apply to the players. It also explains the behavior of the overseers and soldiers within Squid Game. They were once ordinary people, but when granted absolute power, given uniforms and anonymous masks, and placed within a system where brutality is permissible, they quickly become cruel. They believe they are serving a greater purpose, a necessary social experiment to expose the truth about humanity. Or perhaps they are simply corrupted by the very power they wield. They are individuals corrupted by the very system they serve. This is intimately linked to the concept of distorted freedom within Squid Game. From the very beginning, players always had the right to quit by a majority vote. This was presented as their freedom, but in reality, the immense pressure of debt, despair, and the fear of a life worse on the outside rendered that choice meaningless. They voluntarily returned to the game, not because they wanted to, but because they had no better option. This is a form of implicit coercion, a manipulation of will without the use of direct physical force. Relate this to the concept of freedom of choice in our modern society. Are you truly free to choose a low-paying, toxic job in a high-pressure environment just to pay off student loans or rent? Or is it a new form of voluntary servitude, driven by the invisible pressures of the economic system? Are you free to choose to buy things you don't need, simply because advertising manipulates your desires and your fear of being left behind? Society's rules of the game, though not written in blood, still shape our behavior profoundly. One of the most powerful manipulative tools Squid Game uses is classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. But on a more sophisticated level, the show consistently uses specific cues: cheerful childhood music, vibrant colors, the disembodied voice of the young Hee doll, or the cold announcements from the overseers, and links them to death. To extreme fear. Every time players hear those melodies, or see those colors, they automatically associate them with horror and death. Their very brains have been programmed to react in a certain way. This is how childhood symbols are cruelly distorted to amplify the psychological effect. What once brought joy and innocence now becomes a signal of destruction. It imprints deeply into the player's subconscious, creating a lasting trauma even after the game ends. This experiment shows that when your boss constantly talks about freedom to work, be creative, but then installs cameras at your desk, checks your emails hourly, and monitors every click you make, that's also a form of frontman. But in an office version, controlling you in a corporate game, you might not get shot, but you're being controlled with every breath. Have you ever felt like you're being conditioned like Pavlov's dog every time your work phone rings? Even in the middle of the night, your heart races, adrenaline spikes, even though you know it's just a call from a lazy colleague. Or every time you scroll through social media and see someone flaunting their house, car, or success, do you automatically feel pressure to work harder, earn more, even if you don't truly need it? That's also a form of conditioning, a game you're caught in. The manipulators in Squid Game have unveiled a terrifying truth about human nature and how it can be controlled. They don't just control behavior, they shape our perceptions and emotions. But are we living in a larger game, where invisible entities, complex systems, are also controlling us every day without our knowledge? Are we unconsciously following a script written by society, by anonymous powers? Share your thoughts. What in modern life makes you feel most like a player in Squid Game? Don't miss the final part of this video series, where Sleepless Mind will confront the most difficult question: is there a way out of this game? Is our free will truly stronger than all manipulation? Lessons from Squid Game and the way out for human will. And so, after a haunting deep dive into the darkest corners of the human mind, from each brutal game round of Squid Game Season 3, we have returned to this familiar room, to the blue light from the screen, to the 21st century, a century that, ironically, is filled with its own Squid Games. We have collectively witnessed games meticulously designed as horrifying psychological experiments. The hide-and-seek round exposed primal hunting instincts and the fear of being hunted. demonstrating how environment and assigned roles can transform ordinary people into brutal perpetrators or desperate prey. The jump rope round manipulated movement and psychology through classical conditioning, turning a harmless act into a reflex of extreme fear, while using invisible pressure from the family element to push players to their limits. The Squid Game round was the peak of moral erosion, forcing players to dehumanize their fellow humans, accepting collective brutality under the pressure of kill to survive, reflecting the dark aspects of the bystander effect and diffusion of responsibility. Squid Game, ultimately, is more than just a show. It is a chilling allegory for the large-scale experiments in will and instinct control happening around us every day. Let's look at our modern lives. Can you find the hidden Squid Game somewhere within it? Economic pressure, mounting debts like an invisible chain, the obsession with success, and the relentless cycle of consumption, all are brutal rules of the game in which we are trapped. This game's rules are shaped by invisible orchestrators, media manipulation, relentless advertising that shapes our desires, addictive social media algorithms, and society's imposed, often artificial, definitions of happiness and success. We are not forced to wield knives, but we are compelled to step over each other in the corporate race, to hunt for opportunities, and to jump to the rhythm of the market. Who are the anonymous overseers and VIPs in our lives? They could be colossal financial systems, multinational corporations shaping the economy, or invisible political powers dictating our lives, often without us realizing it. They don't need to wear animal masks. They hide behind numbers on financial reports, complex economic policies, or sophisticated media campaigns. Are you chasing goals that aren't truly yours, simply because of society's rules of the game, out of fear of being eliminated from the race? It sounds despairing, doesn't it? It seems we're trapped in a larger, more complex version of Squid Game, where death might not be physical, but the death of spirit, of free will. But is there a way out? Remember the moment in Season 1 when players had the right to vote to end the game? That was a fleeting moment of true freedom, where collective will almost triumphed, but then a harsh truth emerged, the fear of overwhelming debt. The fear of life outside being even scarier than death, led them to voluntarily return. It was a costly lesson. Sometimes, shackles are not physical chains, but the fears we create or accept ourselves. However, even in the most manipulated environments, the power of individual choice still exists. The sole survivor, Seong Gi-hun, ultimately cared little for the money. He didn't use the prize for personal enjoyment. Instead, he used it to challenge the game, to seek out and rescue other trapped souls. That was the true way out, a rebellion not of violence, but of will and compassion. Identify the rules of the game. The first step to escaping any game is to understand its rules. Identify the pressures, the artificial desires that society imposes on you. Are you working for money, or for a purpose? Are you chasing someone else's standards? Redefine winning, losing. Happiness is not the ultimate prize in a relentless race. It is the process, the connection with those around you, the inner freedom, living according to your own values. Winning is not being the sole survivor on top of a money pyramid, but being able to retain your humanity even when everything else collapses. The power of connection, empathy. Squid Game attempts to isolate and make players kill each other. But in real life, empathy, mutual help, and building strong communities are key to resisting manipulation and pressure from the system. It's when you realize you're not alone, dare to refuse, rebel silently, like Gi-hun, who refused to participate in the brutal loop. We too can dare to reject society's imposed values, dare to live differently, dare to ask questions. Sometimes, The greatest rebellion is not through violence, but by living an authentic life, steadfast in one's conscience. Squid Game has shown us the darkest corners of human instinct when pushed to the limit. But it also reminds us, even in the deepest darkness, there is a glimmer of hope for free will and compassion. Even when the game is designed to control every breath, every thought, we still have the capacity to choose. The question is, do you dare to use that will to shape your own game? Do you dare to be the one to break the loop in your own life? Thank you for joining me to the very end of this haunting yet enlightening journey. The Sleepless Mind channel was created to be a space for such conversations, where we can freely ask questions that the outside world sometimes has no answers for, or lacks the patience to listen. Let's turn the comment section into a cozy night cafe, where slightly unusual souls, those who constantly ponder about themselves and the universe, can find each other and share their thoughts. What do you think about the Squid Game of modern life? Have you ever felt like a player in it? If you found this video resonated with you in some way, if it made you feel understood even a little, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel, so we can continue our journey of finding things that are strange, gentle, and perhaps very familiar in the sleepless nights to come. Now then, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let those questions remain in your mind. They don't need answers right now. They just need to be heard. Good night. But does sleep truly come, or is our mind pulled once again into a larger question, into an endless unease? When Seong Gi-hun turned his back on that fateful flight, he wasn't just confronting an organization in South Korea. The curtain has been pulled back, and the final hints of Season 3 suggest the game has become a global pandemic, with its next destination, perhaps, being America. So, when this monster crosses the ocean and takes root in the land of the free, what form will it take? The night is not yet over, and neither is our journey. Squid Game Season 4, American Dream or Global Nightmare. Hello, it's us again, in the stillness of the night. At the end of Season 3's journey, we pulled back the curtain on the Manipulators, on the experimental stages designed to strip human nature bare. We saw Seong Gi-hun, with his fiery red hair like a declaration of war, refused to board the flight to his daughter. He did not choose personal peace. He chose to turn back, to face the monster. His final call with the frontman was not a plea, but an oath. I'm not a horse, I'm a person. And then, a hint was revealed, a small hint, but enough to make the whole world hold its breath. The game was no longer confined to South Korea. It had become a global pandemic, and its next destination might be the most unexpected place of all, America. Tonight, Sleepless Mind will not predict the plot. We will do something bigger. We will conduct a thought experiment. If Squid Game, a product born from the obsession with debt, family pressure, and the suffocating competition of Korean society, were to be exported to America, the land of the dream, of individualism, of freedom, what form would it take? It's not just a change of location, it's a psychological and cultural transformation. What games would be chosen to represent the soul of a nation torn between its ideals and its reality? Who would the new players be, and what are they seeking in this deadly arena? Take a deep breath, because tonight, we will draft the American nightmare together. A version of Squid Game that might be even more terrifying than the original, because it is cloaked in the guise of freedom. The new arena, the glamour of death. Unlike the minimalist, somewhat dated, and memory-laden appearance of the Korean arena, the American version of Squid Game would be a feast of glamour and commercialization. Imagine not a secret island, but a colossal complex built in the middle of the Nevada desert. looking like a hybrid film set between Las Vegas and a reality TV show. Instead of mysterious business cards, the invitation this time would come in the form of golden tickets, heavily promoted on social media, targeting not just the indebted, but also those who crave fame. The invitation would be disguised as the greatest reality show in history, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change your life, where the winner gets not only money but also fame. The players would not be kidnapped. They would voluntarily sign dozens of pages of contracts, with clauses written in tiny font that no one bothers to read. They enter willingly, believing they are participating in a competition, not a massacre. The players' waiting room would not be a cold dormitory, but a space designed like a five-star Las Vegas hotel lobby, with neon lights, red carpets, and giant screens constantly showing dramatic highlights of brave players. The music would be pounding. Everything would be designed to create a false sense of excitement, an illusion of success and entertainment. The guards would not wear pink. They would wear uniforms sponsored by fictional brands, looking like security personnel at a major sporting event. And the American frontman, perhaps, would not be a figure hidden behind a mask, but a charismatic host, with a dazzling white smile and hollow inspirational quotes about the American spirit and overcoming challenges. This aesthetic change is not just for show, it is a psychological trap. It replaces the raw fear of the original with a morbid excitement, an enchantment of the entertainment industry. It makes the players, at least in the initial stages, forget that they are betting their lives. The American games, twisting the national psyche. The folk games of South Korea were built on shared childhood memories. But in America, a multicultural nation, there is no such shared childhood. Instead, the games would be inspired by America's modern myths, consumerism, sports culture, reality TV, and the fierce competition of capitalism. Game 1, The Price of Freedom. Setting: a giant, clean, brightly lit supermarket, filled with goods from expensive electronics to luxury items. It looks like an episode of The Price is Right or Supermarket Sweep. Rules: each player is given a shopping cart and has 10 minutes to shop. They must fill their carts with the most valuable items they can. After 10 minutes, all carts are weighed. Those with the lightest carts, below a predetermined minimum weight, are eliminated. The twist: after the lightest carts are eliminated, the host announces, "Congratulations to our best shoppers. Now, it's time to check out." But paying isn't with money. Every item has a hidden price. A flat-screen TV might cost your most beautiful childhood memory. A designer handbag might be exchanged for the ability to feel a certain emotion. Players must choose to pay the price or be eliminated. Psychological analysis. This game is a direct critique of consumerism and the American dream. It asks the question, what is the true price of wealth? It forces players to face a trade-off between materialism and humanity, between assets and identity. Gathering as much as possible initially seems like a smart strategy, but it leads to a greater personal loss later. It also exploits the psychology of fear of missing out and greed, the core drivers of a consumer society. Game 2, Gridiron Gauntlet. Setting: a colossal American football stadium, with dazzling floodlights, simulated cheers from speakers, and 2 end zones at either end of the field. Rules: players are divided into 2 teams, offense and defense. The offense team's task is to carry a ball to the opponent's end zone. The defense team must stop them at all costs. The twist: stopping here is literal. A valid tackle will cause the tackled player to be eliminated. Conversely, if a member of the defense team fails to stop the ball carrier, they themselves are eliminated. The game is a life or death battle where physical strength and brutality are glorified. Psychological analysis. This game exploits the glorification of violence in American entertainment and sports culture. Football, a full-contact sport, is turned into a real gladiatorial arena. It tests concepts of toxic masculinity, a distorted team spirit, and a win-at-all-costs mentality. It also creates an instant factionalism, a simple tribalism. Your jersey color decides who is a friend and who is a foe. Game 3, the social ladder. Setting, a communal living space designed like a house from Big Brother or The Bachelor. With cameras in every corner, monitoring 24/7. Rules. Each day, players must participate in social challenges. These could be small games of skill, talent competitions, or tasks that force them to reveal personal secrets. Based on their performance and presentation, they will be voted on by other players. The person with the least liked votes at the end of the day is eliminated. The twist. The voting system is extremely ambiguous. Sometimes, the person eliminated is not the one with the fewest votes, but the one the front man deems the most boring. Or, a person can use points earned from challenges to buy immunity or even buy other players' votes. Psychological analysis. This is an attack on social media culture, the obsession with fame, and the vanity of popularity. Players are forced to act, to create an appealing personal brand to survive. They must form alliances, then betray them. Trust becomes a commodity. This game exposes the arbitrariness of cancel culture and how public opinion can be manipulated. It turns the survival battle into a psychological drama, where the sharpest knife is not a weapon, but words and manipulation. Game 4, musical chairs. Last man standing. Setting, a multi-tiered, circular arena. In the center is a stage, and surrounding it are hundreds of chairs. Rules. The classic rules of musical chairs. When a patriotic American song plays, players must move around the rows of chairs. When the music stops, they must quickly find a chair. There are always fewer chairs than players. The twist. Those without a chair are not just eliminated. The floor beneath their feet opens up, and they fall into an abyss. The game continues, with fewer chairs each round, the space becoming more crowded and brutal. Panic reaches its peak when only a few people in a single chair remain. Psychological analysis. This is the most brutal and direct metaphor for competitive capitalism and economic scarcity. The chair represents a job, a resource, a safe position in society. The music symbolizes the functioning of the economy. When the economy stops, a struggle for survival ensues, and there will always be people who are laid off. This game strips away all pretense of cooperation, forcing players to act in their own naked self-interest. It is the pure distillation of the fear of being left behind. The new VIPs, the consumers of despair. The American version of the VIPs would be different. They aren't just old, bored billionaires seeking a thrill. They could be tech moguls from Silicon Valley, Hollywood producers, has-been reality TV stars. For them, this isn't just a bet. This is content. They don't just watch, they produce. They can vote on twists in the game, sponsor a player they like, or even set challenges for the players through an exclusive betting app. They turned human suffering into a perfectly packaged entertainment product, a fantasy league of life and death. Their motivation is not just the morbidity of observation, but the morbidity of producing and consuming tragedy as a luxury good. Squid Game is not a product of South Korea. It is a virus capable of mutating and adapting to any culture it infects. In South Korea, it exploited the pain of debt and family pressure. In America, it exploits the emptiness of the American dream, the obsession with fame, and the brutality of extreme individualism. The packaging may differ, from nostalgic folk games to glamorous television shows, but the core remains unchanged. Human desperation is always the most profitable entertainment for the elite. The American dream promises that anyone, with hard work, can succeed. The American version of Squid Game makes a similar promise, but it exposes the true cost of that promise. For one person to win, hundreds of others must fall. That's not a dream, it's a nightmare sold on television. And what about you? If Squid Game came to your country, what form would it take? What games would be chosen to reflect the anxieties and myths of your own culture? Perhaps the answer will tell us what games we are truly playing every day, without even realizing it. Thank you for joining Sleepless Mind to the end of this journey. The comment section is always our late night cafe, a place where sleepless souls can find each other and share their reflections. If these ponderings resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so we don't miss each other on the long nights ahead. Now then, I wish you a peaceful sleep, a sleep without games. Some stories end with a lesson, others end with a blessing. Tonight, yours ends with a sound, one I crafted long before we began, for the few who would walk with me until the very end. It's not just music, it's a hush, a spell, a gentle bridge into your dreams. And it's yours now. All that's left is to drift. still here, then you're something rare. Not many stay this long. So, thank you for choosing to stay. I'm here too, still awake, surrounded by the quiet glow of my editing screen, shaping the next stories just for you. If there's anything you want to leave behind, a whisper, a suggestion, even just a symbol, drop it in the comments. Because maybe, tomorrow night, you'll hear yourself echoed in a story that's never been told before. still here, even now? I have a feeling part of you is still wandering somewhere between wakefulness and dreaming. I know that feeling well because I'm still awake with you. In a quiet room, I'm gently laying out layers of sound, each breath, each beat, preparing the next journey we'll take together. If you're still listening, leave me a sign. Let me know how you're feeling or just where you are in this vast world. Because right now, in this stillness, you are not alone. You're still there, aren't you? I can't see you, but I can feel you. Like a soft signal, pulsing across the silence. Over here, I'm still working, refining layers of sound, rewriting fragments of voice, building the landscape for our next adventure. One that you might inspire. If an idea comes to you, share it with me. Comment below. A theme, a memory, a strange dream. I read every word, because I never tell these stories alone. I tell them with you.